This isn't the same world your father lived in. You're never going to get ahead in this economy by earning money. And if you're a young person who clicked on this video, chances are you've already intuitively discovered this. You can try to work harder all you want, but your rent and living costs just rise way faster than the puny extra few bucks you make from working more. You can try to get an education and acquire a skill, as they say, but you're just going to accumulate unbearable levels of debt only for an AI to take your job by the time you graduate. And of course, my new favorite one, just get into the trades. Hey, if you want to do that, more power to you. But just know you're probably going to end up paying with your health in the long run. This is made worse by the fact that the powers in charge have made it to where literally everything in life is about money. If you're poor, you're automatically a loser and a horrible person. If you're rich, you're a god to be worshipped, no matter how many others you stepped on and exploited to get there. But more importantly, it has a deathly vice grip on literally every aspect of your life. What you can do, where you can go, when, and even if you get to eat. It feels so damn oppressive, like a godly force in the sky watching over and controlling literally everything you do. But does it have to be this way? It certainly seems so. It's the only world we've known our whole lives, and it's really hard to imagine how life would be any different. But what if it could be? And what if Gen Z is already starting to figure out clever and creative ways out of this nightmare simulation? Before we begin, let's clarify one thing. This video isn't some wacky woo-woo science where I tell you you don't need money at all to survive. All you need to do is meditate and visualize or whatever. No, this isn't going to be those pure delusional copium rants that tell you, oh, you don't need money because you can be rich in love and healing the planet or whatever. Not that any of those things are bad, but unfortunately, we do live in a material world where we need money to survive. No, this is indeed going to be about how Gen Z is finding insane cheat codes, glitches in the simulation to get rich without money. But as you'll soon see, this directly and ironically allows you to save and make a lot more money itself as well.
Money is not food. Money is not energy. Money is not housing. Money is not healthcare, okay? If we give everybody money, we have not increased the amount of actual resources and assets we have in our society, okay? So you don't make society richer by giving people money. You make society richer by creating and having more resources and assets. So if I give everybody more money, all that happens is the prices go up. But if I give you a bit of money and him a lot of money, then he gets richer and you get poorer because you have a bit more money, but the prices have gone up relative to both of your increases in money. So I think this is the thing I want, and the reason I'm hammering this down is because they did that in COVID and they got away with it. And to be honest, the Conservative government lucked out with the Ukraine war because that took the entire blame for the inflation, which in my opinion was caused by their massive increase in inequality.
This is Gary Stevenson, a brilliant trader and economist who quit his extremely lucrative day trading career because he felt so compelled to do something after seeing all these problems we're facing today. Big respect to Gary. We need more young voices like him in charge of the world today. This clip was a mind-blowing epiphany for me because he's absolutely right, and I never really thought of it that way before. Money itself is not a resource. It's just a method the government created to more effectively keep track of resources. Unfortunately, that also means it's been used to control and exploit us. In our current world, the rules are you have to acquire money first, then use that money to obtain resources like food, for example. And since this is just the way it's been our whole lives, we've come to just accept it as the way things are. But what if you could bypass this middle step of making money altogether, free yourself from the burden required to obtain it, and skip directly to the step of obtaining resources? This is what a lot of South Korean Zoomers are already figuring out how to do. A new report recently came out highlighting how young South Korean farmers are now literally earning more than white-collar workers. Food is a resource as old as time. It's one of few resources that we know for a fact will be valuable so long as humanity exists. And as such, it's not subject to the relentless, unpredictable market demands that are constantly shifting in the rapidly changing world we live in. Cars replaced horses, airplanes replaced ships, and AI is replacing, well, just about everything. But food is something we'll always need. Not only are these young South Korean farmers earning much more than white-collar workers, they're working a lot less and in a much more chill and relaxed environment. And all the comments have noticed this as well. Good for the soul. Making money and out of the rat race? Sign me up. Looks much more relaxing than a typical office job. This is good because life in cities is financially unsustainable. The exorbitant cost of living is a deterrent to mental health, people getting married, and having children. Now, this comment brings up another great point in which you'll see we harp on throughout this entire video. In this day and age, with how expensive everything has gotten, minimizing your living expenses and your burn rate is just as, if not more valuable, than actually earning money. These young farmers not only make more money and have a more chill and peaceful work environment, way better for their mental health, they save a lot of money by not having to live in Seoul. South Korea, and specifically Seoul, is the embodiment of the nightmarish capitalist hellscape we live in today. Kids are pushed into hellacious 12-hour school days from kindergarten. Work hours, absolutely insane. People literally die from overwork. You're constantly being pressured to climb the corporate ladder, literally from the time you're born to the time you die. And just like every other big city dominated by corporations, one way they keep you constantly trapped in this never-ending rat race is by constantly raising the cost of living. Anytime you get a slight raise or come across any amount of cash, immediately prices go up and you're right back to where you started, living paycheck to paycheck, unable to save up anything at all. Not that long ago, it was the ultimate status symbol in Korea to climb the corporate ladder. They brainwashed everyone else into believing this, but like everywhere, Korean Gen Z are way too smart to buy this illusion. They've started a trend of escaping the corporate dumpster fire of Seoul and moving back to farming villages in rural areas. And they're not only richer in time, mental health, and quality of life, they're actually richer in money itself as well, as they're able to not only make more, they're also able to save way more, a lot more, by not having to pay for the insane living cost in Seoul. But to be fair, the circumstances in Korea are a bit exceptional. They're using what's called smart farms with a lot of high-tech equipment to make the job much easier. And with the oversaturation in white-collar job markets, the Korean government has seen the necessity of these smart farm projects and is providing a lot of money to help subsidize it. So the real question is, can you do something similar to this no matter where you live? Well, let's find out. Hey guys, so I'm on a mission and I need your help. You see, I've made it the purpose of this channel to defend Gen Z from all these nasty, delusional Gen Z haters, and I've just realized we're starting to get close to taking down the most despicable one yet, the angry guy. This guy is not just another delusional old fart calling Gen Z lazy. He's literally had videos where he openly celebrates Gen Z suffering and even dying. He's just straight up a terrible, terrible human being. Now, thankfully, his channel is rapidly dying and we are rapidly gaining ground on him as we speak. So, if you're new here and enjoying this content, definitely consider subscribing and helping us take down the biggest Gen Z hater out there. The current goal is to surpass him in subscribers by the end of summer. With your help, we can absolutely do this. No one's forcing you to work. You just have to work if you want to eat. This isn't society or capitalism forcing you to work. This is just how the laws of nature work. Nothing is free. This is one of the most widely regurgitated myths from delusional boomers and corporate shills used to gaslight Gen Z and millennials into working for their dogshit wages and modern slavery working conditions. But the facts and science prove that this is just totally and objectively false. The Kung are a tribe who still maintain their hunter-gatherer lifestyle to this day. They only have to work about 15 hours per week to gather food, and extensive field research has shown they consume a very healthy and ample diet of over 2,000 calories per day. On top of this, they show remarkably good health indicators and no nutritional deficiencies. They're able to do this by collecting the freely and abundantly available food sources that grow naturally in the Kalahari Desert. They are definitive scientific proof that this idea that nothing is free, not even in nature, is just a total and utter myth. No human ever had to spend any time, money, or energy to build the mongogo nuts and many other foods that feed the Kung. This is literally as free as it gets. They literally just grow naturally by themselves in nature. This is literally as free as it gets. But this video isn't going to be about the Kung. This video is about you and what you can do about all this. You see, as I was doing research for these videos, I became very curious on why delusional boomers and corporate shills are so hell-bent on pushing this outright lie that food isn't free and that nothing is free. And then it hit me. You see, by pushing this lie that you'd have to work for food anyways, even in nature, they're able to maintain power and control over you because they control all the money and food supply. Food is an especially powerful commodity to weaponize because it's a non-negotiable living expense. This allows them to price gouge the cost as high as they want because they know you can't do anything about it, and we've all experienced this in recent years. If somebody made an iPhone too expensive, you could simply just choose not to buy an iPhone. However, if they make food too expensive, which is exactly what they're doing now, you have no choice but to accept their dogshit wages and work longer and harder hours in order to be able to afford it. But what if it didn't have to be this way? What if we could once again take back control of our own food sources and not be so reliant on the corporations who are absolutely exploiting us with these insane prices right now? Most of us can't move to Korea to work on a smart farm, nor can we move to the Kalahari Desert to collect mongogo nuts. But there are small steps we can all take to reduce our dependence on modern society for our basic needs like food. This is Charles Collins. Like many of you, he got sick of the 9-to-5 corporate rat race and decided to just build his own self-sustaining farm. Now, this might all look intimidating at face value, but it's important to remember that Charles here is literally feeding an entire family with 3 kids here. According to him, however, you can get started at any level, even on a much smaller scale. That would be achievable for a lot of you out there watching.
If you actually want to do it, and you got that spark in you, just take that first step. Literally take that first step. You don't have to do it on a large scale. Like I said, not even an estate, not even a huge yard, not even a patio. I just showed you how to do it on a countertop. If you can grow a basil plant in a cup on your kitchen counter, or in your windowsill, you can do everything that we're doing back there. Don't be intimidated, think big, and think outside of the box.
Charles is able to leverage new age farming techniques like hydroponics, which allow you to grow food with a nutrient water solution rather than with soil, which allows for much faster growth and higher yields, all while taking up much less space. So now it's time to get to the good stuff, which is how can you use this knowledge to escape this nightmare economy we're all living in? Most of us don't have the resources to simply build our own full-time farm like Charles does. However, with modern-day farming methods like hydroponics, we don't necessarily need to. If you have even a small balcony or a window with some sunlight, you can grow basic crops like cherry tomatoes, cucumbers, spinach, and more. A lot of Zoomers are already doing this, and some of these balcony gardens legit look incredible. Keep in mind as well that for most of us, this isn't necessarily about checking out of society and being 100% self-sufficient. That option isn't available or even desirable for a lot of us. This is simply about reducing your dependency on society as much as you reasonably can. You'll likely still need to go to the store and buy some food. It's not going to reduce your food bill to 0 overnight. However, it can absolutely cut your food bill by anywhere between 30 to 50%. And on top of that, if like many young people today, you're feeling lost and unable to find work in this absolute dogshit job market, and you feel like you just want to do something productive with your life without needing to rely on a corporation for it, this is a great side project and hobby that pretty much anyone can do that doesn't take that much work, reduces your dependency on money and on society, and takes back some semblance of control over your own life. Conclusion. So, those of you who follow my videos know I'm a huge advocate for universal basic income. Rest assured, I'm not going to be talking about UBI again here, as I talk about it in pretty much every other video. Instead, I'm going to be focusing on one argument I always hear against universal basic income, which always makes me chuckle a bit. But you're going to be dependent on the government now. What if they take away your UBI because you said something they don't like? Because you wouldn't take the shot? Because blah blah blah. The reason this argument always makes me chuckle is because of just how naive it is to believe that being dependent on a job and on a corporation for a paycheck isn't way worse. Do corporations not fire people for saying something they don't like? Did corporations not fire a ton of people for refusing to take the shot? Do corporations not fire people for literally no reason at all? Corporations are the absolute scum of the earth when it comes to this. They even fire people for having cancer. So to me, this is just so cute and adorable that people think having a job makes you all independent, when in reality, all it does is shift your dependency from your parents or the government to a corporation instead. So maybe the real issue here is that we're thinking about dependency in the wrong way altogether. Maybe being dependent on a job for a paycheck and a corporation who doesn't care about you is the absolute worst type of dependency. And maybe the way out of this is to just once again take back control of our basic living needs. It doesn't mean everyone has to be a full-time farmer. It just means that if we all learned even some of the basics, we'd have the power to say no to these corrupt, price-gouging corporations who control all the money and food supply right now. A young Chinese streamer cooks cheap, delicious meals, carefully tracking her budget to make sure she spends no more than $1.30 per day. A trend known as geohacking emerges, where young Zoomers escape the nightmarish living cost of the West by moving out to cheap countries such as Albania and Georgia, where you can live on as little as $300 per month. And finally, the biggest, baddest, Giga Chad final boss of them all, a young man who, after graduating high school and like many of you, feeling quite lost in life, decided to venture out straight out into the wilderness, hunt and forage his own food, even build his own log cabin, and just live a peaceful, meaningful existence with nature. Just him and his dog. No BS 9-to-5 job and degenerate modern society required. A recent report came out that this year's college graduates are facing perhaps the worst job market ever. The AI revolution happened way faster than anyone expected and is already causing what they call an entry-level job bloodbath. Not to mention, as I'm sure all of you already know, the job market was already total trash before all this even happened. This made me realize that what we're doing right here on this channel might be more important now than ever. Gen Z already rightfully never wanted to work these soulless 9-to-5 jobs, getting paid dogshit wages and being exploited for corporate profits. And with traditional 9-to-5 jobs rapidly dying in front of our very eyes as we speak, escaping the 9-to-5 rat race is no longer a luxury, but a necessity at this point. You know how they always tell Gen Z, you guys need to get a real job. Not everyone can be an influencer. The hilarious irony in all of this is that with how bad the traditional job market is, the same logic now applies to quote-unquote real jobs now too. Statistical data and anecdotal evidence all confirm the same thing. There just aren't enough jobs for everyone anymore, and even the few ones remaining pay total absolute dog shit. Success isn't about finding a job anymore. It's about finding a way to survive and thrive without one. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. Before we kick things off, let's establish a few quick ground rules here. The 3 examples I'm going to be highlighting in this video are purely unique, creative, and likely strategies you've never heard of before. And most importantly, they're all things that anyone can do. Nothing like dropshipping or crypto trading. Everybody already knows about those. There's already countless videos about those. You don't need my help for that. Best of all, These all require little to no initial investment. As I understand, the most frustrating thing about all these start your own business ideas is that you have to invest such a hefty initial amount that most of us just don't have in this economy. So, with that being said, let's get this show on the road. Part 1, Revenge Saving. We're going to kick things off with a familiar face that you may recognize from my Gen Z Revolution video last week, Xiao Jai Jai. Gen Z is waking up and checking out of this BS rigged game modern society wants you to play. And perhaps nowhere is this more pronounced than in China, where young people have gotten so fed up with this horrible job market and the unrealistic pressure to succeed that they've gone from quiet quitting to outright letting it rot. They've been looking for any way possible to escape the 9-to-5 rat race, and they've discovered some very interesting strategies. Perhaps the best one is what they call revenge saving. This is where you spend as little as humanly possible to avoid working a 9-to-5, and also, as this comment puts it perfectly right here, not spending hurts those in power. The best professionally unemployed revenge saver I could find is the streamer Xiao Jai Jai, a young Chinese woman who gets by on spending just 10 Chinese yuan, or about $1.30 per day. She does this by spending most of her time cooking the cheapest possible meals without sacrificing health or taste. A lot of the meals she cooks legitimately look delicious and healthy, not to mention the additional health benefits you get from not having an asshole boss scream in your face 8 hours a day. Now, in the last video I mentioned her, a lot of you were skeptical that this strategy could work in the West. Some of you doubted that these meals were really healthy, others pointed out that with how insane inflation has gotten in recent years, there's no way it would be that cheap anymore, even with revenge saving. These were fair concerns, so I decided to try it out for myself just to see how much it would cost and if this strategy is truly viable. So I looked up some of the most cheap and delicious meals you could cook without sacrificing health and nutrition, and this is what I came up with. These oatmeal banana pancakes are great for breakfast. I made these myself actually the other day. They have a very good complex carb profile and cost less than $1 to make per serving. Red lentils are very cheap and a great source of plant protein, and they can easily be made into lentil bread or tofu, which increases their volume dramatically and even gives you days worth of food for less than $1. Vegetables are also very cheap and can be added to ramen cooked with some eggs or meat to give you a fantastic combination of taste with plenty of nutrients, carbs, and protein to boot. Now, with how expensive everything has gotten in the West, living off $1.30 per day like Xiao Jai Jai is probably unrealistic at this point. But from what I've personally tried and experienced, a $3 a day budget is very doable. Of course, this could be slightly more or slightly less depending on where exactly you live, but the point still stands that it'll be a significant step towards escaping the 9-to-5 wage slavery system. This highlights another point I've been harping on for quite some time now, which is that in this economy, in midst of this insane inflation, reducing your living expenses is just as, if not more valuable, than trying to earn more money. Gen Z has rightfully seen that busting your ass just to make more money, only to have the government print nonstop and constantly devalue that money, is a total waste of time. But reducing your dependency on money, well, that's how you truly hurt those in power, as this comment puts perfectly. Hey guys, you may have noticed we're starting to get very close to 20,000 subscribers now. So I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for this incredible, rapidly growing community we're building here. If you're new here and enjoying this content, definitely consider subscribing and helping us get closer to this magic number. Thank you guys so much. You guys are the best. Part 2, geohacking. Now, one thing that's undoubtedly made the economy significantly worse for young people today than what our parents had is the rise of globalization. We're having to compete against literally millions more immigrants and outsourced jobs than the previous generations could even fathom. What if, however, you could play the opposite side of the globalization coin and use it to your advantage instead? Well, this is what geohacking is, and after how bad you've been screwed over by globalization, this is more than fair game. Geohacking is nothing new. It involves simply securing some sort of online income and moving abroad where your living expenses are significantly lower. I know this strategy very well because this is actually exactly what I did in my own personal quest of escaping the 9-to-5 rat race myself. What I didn't know, however, was just how much further you can take it these days. There are places like Thailand, Vietnam, Georgia, and Albania where you can live off as little as just $300 per month. Yes, you heard that right, $300 per month. How the hell is this possible, you might ask? Well, let's break it down. Here's an article with a detailed breakdown on the cost of living in Albania. In the capital Tirana, an apartment is between 400 to 600 euros per month in the city, but in the suburbs, you can find options for as little as $250 to $400 per month. Now, let's say you find one for $300. To take this a step even further, you could find a friend who has a similar mindset of escaping the 9-to-5 to tag along this journey with you. And then you could split the rent, and as roommates, each only pay $150 per month. Food is much cheaper in Albania as well. And as we already talked about with revenge saving, it's even possible to live off $100 for food in the West. So in Albania, it should be more than doable. Now, you've paid off your rent and food with just $250 per month. And this leaves you with $50 a month left over for any various miscellaneous living expenses you might have. Now, of course, $300 a month is really super minimalistic and uncomfortable, even in Albania. I'm just saying it's technically possible, but obviously insanely difficult unless you have the absolute utmost level of mental discipline. Probably, I would say a more realistic range to aim for is between $700 to $800 a month. That way, you can actually live comfortably and enjoy life a bit. One key lesson to learn from all this is that Gen Z, through finding these creative, unexpected ways to live without a job, has also redefined what it means to earn a living. I get comments all the time from boomers being like, but not everyone can make a living as an influencer or through their dreams and passions. Well, first of all, with how awful the job market is, the exact same logic applies to normal 9-to-5 jobs now too. Not everyone can even get a normal 9-to-5 job anymore either, as we are all painfully aware of. Second of all, when you find ways to creatively reduce your living expenses and your dependency on society in general, it becomes a lot easier to make a living doing what you love. Sure, not everyone can be Mr. Beast, but if you only have to spend $1.30 per day on food, then making a living through your passions becomes a lot more achievable, as the definition of a living itself is just a few dollars per day rather than having to make $100,000 a year just to pay back your ridiculous student loan debts. Part 3. Extreme survivalism. What if you had absolutely nothing? $0 saved up, 0 job prospects, and 0 support from your family. A common response I get in a lot of my videos is that these solutions don't work for everyone. Not everyone can make it as an influencer, not everyone has good parents that they can live with, or just has enough saved up to start their own business idea. Well, this is something that literally anyone could do, even if you had absolutely no money saved up at all. Though I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for reasons you're soon about to see. This is Eric Grankvist. You can consider him the absolute final boss Giga Chad of escaping the 9-to-5. About 6 years ago, when Eric graduated high school, he found himself in the same situation as a lot of you. Hailing from Stockholm, Sweden, he couldn't find much meaning in going any of the traditional routes, such as working a 9-to-5 or going to college. So as a result, he felt extremely lost and had no clue what he wanted to do in life. Then one day, he saw a documentary of the legendary American survivalist Richard Perneck and became inspired to take a similar journey of his own. And so he ventured out into the middle of the woods with nothing but himself, his awesome dog, and a few basic survival tools. 6 years later, he's now built a fully renovated and cozy, spacious log cabin with a kitchen and even an underground food cellar and heating system. He hunts, gathers, and grows all his own food and lives purely off the land in the most literal sense. This is the truest form of self-dependency right here. I kind of laugh when people say you need to get a job because it's not good to be dependent on the government or your parents. But getting a job doesn't make you independent at all. It just makes you dependent on a corporation instead. Now, this guy, this right here, this is true independence. Let's spend some time talking about how Grankfist actually pulls this off. Grankfist first scouts a location lush with free food resources such as elderberries and beets. He moves very slowly and deliberately in order to conserve energy. The first priority is to find a source of fresh, clean water, as the human body can go a few weeks without food, but only 3 days without water. You can find this in the wild by tapping into the sap of a birch tree, or simply by boiling water from a stream. He then forages for easy food sources such as beets and elderberries, which are quite abundant in nature. You can also catch fish from nearby streams as well. Then, you can set up a simple structure like a debris hut as a temporary shelter to keep you dry and safe while you work towards your ultimate goal of building a log cabin. Then finally, the process of building the cabin begins. Logging, debarking, and building the cabin one piece at a time. It took Grankfist years to build up this cabin, but the advantage of this is that once he finished building it, it was his and his alone. None of this working your whole life just to never be able to own a house anyways that we have to go through today. Grankfist documented his entire journey on YouTube and has even secured a sponsor from a solar battery company, which allows him to live off the grid and do YouTube. He's accumulated millions of views and subscribers, and at this point, he definitely has enough money to move back into society and live a pretty lavish lifestyle if he wanted. But it doesn't seem like he even wants to at this point. His channel is still quite active, and even after 6 years of living in the wild, he seems to be at peace, just enjoying the peaceful connection he's found with nature, and is straight up just more content and happy out there. And after all the insanity of the ridiculous modern world we live in today, I honestly can't say I blame him. Now again, I must reiterate, this is obviously insanely risky and dangerous, so try this at your own risk. This is not any sort of professional life advice whatsoever. I personally would recommend any of the other options we discussed in the video before considering this as a last resort. I just figured I'd include it because I found the story to be incredibly inspiring, and for those of you who are really stuck at zero right now, with no money and no support from your family, this might be your best option if you would really rather do anything than work a 9 to 5. So, these are all of the ways Gen Z is finding incredible, creative ways to be professionally unemployed. I've spent a lot of time in my videos talking about why Gen Z is morally and logically correct for not wanting to work these soulless, dead-end 9 to 5 jobs. But I've come to realize recently that this isn't just about being heard or validated anymore. This is literally our future survival at stake here. Even if 9 to 5 jobs were perfect, even if they all still paid well, even if bosses were amazing people who treated us well, the cold, hard, brutal truth that your delusional boomer parents don't want to admit is that there simply isn't going to be enough jobs for everyone anymore. I don't know all the solutions, and I'm not saying the ones in this video can save everyone. But the bottom line here is that we need to make a drastic shift in our mentality. It's no longer about Gen Z doesn't want to work anymore, but rather we will all have to find a way to survive and live a meaningful life without having to depend on 9 to 5 jobs that are rapidly dying out.
So, if you click this video, chances are you're one of many people who don't want to work anymore. And that's awesome. We're all fed up with the system at this point. But how exactly do you pull that off? You got to pay rent, you got to feed yourself, you got bills to pay, right? Well, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Life and survival is ultimately just a cup with a hole on the bottom. On one side, flows in your income. On the other side, flows out your living expenses. To escape the 9 to 5 rat race, all you have to do is fill up this cup. The problem is, most people fail to do this because school only taught you one way to do it, increasing the inflow. This is why everyone is so obsessed with making more money, going to school, climbing the corporate ladder, and last but not least, falling for all these get-rich-quick scams. Focusing purely on inflow doesn't work because no matter how much you make, you always end up just spending more. You've probably personally experienced this yourself. But what if instead you learned how to do something they never taught you in school? What if instead of being trapped in this endless cycle of making more, only to spend more? What if you just learned how to plug the hole on the bottom so that just about any money you came up with, whether big or small, would just stay in this cup forever? How much easier would it be to fill up this cup? Let's find out. Part 1. Feeding yourself. Let's start off with the most obvious, basic human need. Food. We'd all love to quit our jobs, but you gotta eat, right? Well, yes, but what you probably don't know is you don't necessarily need money to do so. I'm about to show you how you can eat very well and healthy for well under $100 a month. In fact, you could even get the cost down to zero. I spent over a decade in my 20s as a permanent vagabond traveler, going from country to country. Needless to say, there were plenty of times where I ran very low on funds. One time I was down to my last $1,000 in a foreign country with no income coming in. So I knew I had to stretch that money as long as humanly possible to figure something out. It was around this time when I read a story about Elon Musk going an entire month spending only $1 a day on food when he was a young college student. I looked up every recipe he did: peanut butter and bananas with oatmeal for breakfast, and cheap pastas for lunch and dinner. Now, of course, Elon did this in 1990 when the dollar went a lot further, so it wasn't quite realistic to repeat this in 2017 when I tried it. But I did come pretty close. I did manage to spend only about $2 or $3 per day on food for several months, and this quite literally saved me. Stretching this money so far gave me enough time to find an online tutoring gig and eventually rebuild my savings. This saved me from being stranded in a foreign country with no money or worse, shamefully asking my parents for help. Now I know what you're thinking. Inflation has gone absolutely parabolic in recent years. Would this still be possible with today's food prices? I always want to make sure my information and advice is still relevant and up to date. And so I actually personally went out and tried a bunch of these $1 a day recipes just for you to see if this still works. And I actually discovered some very good news. You see, unlike when Elon did this, and unlike even when I did it, there is a ton of way better information and recipes available today, thanks to social media. Hey, for once we can finally say something good about social media and the modern world. You can find pretty decent recipes all over YouTube and TikTok of burritos, lentil soup, egg sandwiches, even some recipes that include meat, all for around $1 or $2 a day. So if you're feeling lost in life and you don't know what to do, start by challenging yourself to learn how to cook all these delicious cheap meals and get your food budget under $100 a month. This is an incredibly overpowered cheat code that anyone can learn how to do, and in terms of financial stability, will do way more for you long term than getting a job or going to college. Consider this a preview of the skills I will be teaching you throughout this video. No massive initial investment required. No needing to depend on a corporation to approve you for a job. No barrier to entry. Literally, something anyone can start doing today. Okay, so now that you've learned how to cook your own meals for under $100 a month, we can take this even a step further by implementing the second cheat code I'm about to show you. Food banks. Just about every community has local churches and food banks where you can get some pretty decent food for free. This is usually food that would have been thrown out anyways, so if you're one of those people with moral qualms about being on welfare, you don't have to worry here. Contact any local church or community leader you can find to learn where and when your local food banks are open, and bring a couple big bags to collect as much food as you can. Typically, you can get enough food to last you nearly a week. Now, when you can combine this strategy with the one I showed you previously, it's theoretically possible to get your food expenses to nearly zero. All you have to do is make yourself our zero classic oatmeal peanut butter and banana recipe for breakfast, and eat the free food from the food banks for lunch and dinner, and you'll have more than enough to feed yourself without a job. The oatmeal breakfast doesn't even cost $1 a day, so in total, you'll only be spending around $15 a month or so on food. Pretty crazy, right? And if you really want to take this to the extreme, you can implement another cheat code known as OMAD, or 2MAD. This is where you only eat once or twice per day, and there's supposedly some health benefits that come with this. I'm not going to get into the science of it all, but it is quite interesting, so if you want to learn more, I've posted links in the video description about it. Now, if you combine this with the food bank strategy, you can actually get your food expenses to literally zero. I wouldn't recommend this though, as it's pretty torturous, and eventually you'll want to buy something from the store and eat something of your own choosing. But as you can see, using all the strategies I just showed you, you can easily eat very well and very pleasantly for well under $50 a month, we'll say. For me personally, I would go as far as to say that this is the single most valuable skill I've learned when it comes to an emotional sense of financial security. And I say that as someone who was an early investor in Bitcoin and Tesla and has a somewhat successful YouTube channel today. The reason is because on any given day, Bitcoin could crash, Tesla could fail. And I don't know how big this YouTube channel will get though. Thanks to your support, the recent growth has been pretty cool. But even if the whole world and financial markets go to hell, who's going to stop me from making oatmeal with peanut butter and bananas? Part 2. Shelter. Okay, so now that we've established how you can feed yourself without a job, let's talk about the next most important basic human need: shelter. After all, you'd love to quit your job, but then, how do you pay your rent? Well, the answer is really simple: just live with your parents. Just kidding, guys. I know you're sick of hearing me say that by now. But seriously, it's not a bad option if your parents will allow it. Not all of us are so fortunate, though, so for those of you who can't do this, how do you get away from having to pay rent? It is possible. I would know, as I did it for over 10 years. The answer is volunteer work. There are two main forms of volunteer work I found during my travels that helped me avoid having to pay for rent: hostel work and workaway. Let's start with hostel work. A lot of hostels operate on low budgets as they offer extremely affordable rooms for young travelers. This means that they prefer having volunteers, a lot of whom are also travelers themselves, to help manage things around the hostel in exchange for free accommodation and breakfast. This is a win-win for both parties, as it's only a chill 20 hours of work per week, and getting free accommodation is often more valuable than getting some low wage and having to pay for rent. And this is even more true now than when I did it, because as you all know, rent prices have absolutely ballooned out of control now. Hostels are also a great social environment for being able to interact with guests and travelers from all over the world. If you're interested in trying this out, you can head over to hosteljobs.net and just apply for any opening you see. You'll quickly find out that it's 1,000,000 times easier to get a response and a job from one of these than the traditional job market. Next, we have Workaway, which is a general volunteering website where you can find all sorts of volunteer work, from helping out a family to farm work to youth summer camps. A lot of these not only offer free accommodation, some offer free food as well. I did a wide variety of these in my 10-year travel journey, and it was all so incredibly rewarding. Unlike working for a soulless corporate boss, you actually make a difference for real, everyday people. Just like with hostel jobs, by the way. These are way easier to get than the traditional job market. Quick caveat here: Workaway does require a €59 registration fee, or $69 for two people if you have a partner or friend who's interested in taking this journey with you. To me, this investment was more than worth it, as it saved me years of having to pay rent. And no, I'm not running any affiliate links in case you were wondering. Now, as an extra bonus, since most of you who watch my channel are Gen Z, I think this kind of lifestyle is absolutely perfect for Gen Z. The reason I say this is because Gen Z is infamous for job hopping, they're not afraid to be fired, and they have zero loyalty to these BS modern jobs and corporations. You guys are not afraid of change. This actually perfectly suits the traveling volunteer lifestyle. Generally speaking, you won't be staying at any one place for longer than 3 months, and you can rinse and repeat these gigs forever. I know people who have bounced around volunteering at different places for over 10 years. In fact, I myself was one of those people. And in the process, you get to see the world, meet all kinds of cool people, and most importantly, avoid having to pay these ridiculous $2,000 a month rent prices. Part 3. Mentality. So, now that you know how to cover your basic living expenses without having to work, now that you've seen it's possible, let's talk about the mentality you need to have to pull this off. You see, anyone can do this from a logical standpoint. No one's stopping you from just cooking cheap meals or volunteering wherever you want. But it's a scary leap of faith for a lot of people. I'm not an exceptionally talented or brilliant guy, but I'd say what allowed me to pull this off for 10 years was simply how much I hated working. Whenever I ran into some tough times, I'd always ask myself, is this worse than working a 9 to 5? And no matter how bad things got, the answer was always no. When my friends and family looked down on me for using food banks, I'd just ask myself, would you rather deal with their condescension but have an extra 10 hours of freedom to yourself? Or would you rather slave your life away for their meaningless respect? And seeing how many of you out there also hate working for these BS companies and this BS system we live in, I think you have the mentality to pull this off as well. When things get tough, just remember working a 9 to 5 would be worse. So hopefully by now, you can see how you can live a life free of having to work. Now, for those of you who regularly follow me, this video is not the full complete guide on how to survive without a job that I promised. You can consider this video a sneak preview of that. There's still a lot more steps we have to cover as to how to fully survive without a job. You're probably still wondering, for example, how do you make money with this lifestyle so you can actually start saving up? We'll cover all that and more in the full guide, which will be out before the end of the year. It will just take a bit of time for that, as I'm pouring in, quite literally, my entire 15 years of job-free survival experience into this.
Okay guys, this is by far my biggest video project yet. We've talked a lot about why modern day 9 to 5 jobs are just not worth it for Gen Z. The wages are dog shit. Every job's basically a dead-end job, and the work itself is just so soulless and unfulfilling. That being said, what other choice do you have? What exactly is the alternative to escaping this broken system? Can you even escape it? More and more, you guys have been asking me to not just talk about problems, but also provide some solutions. And to be honest, I think this is more than fair. Solutions are tricky though, because it's going to vary a lot depending on your individual circumstances. For example, if you're a young American citizen with a source of online income, moving overseas where your dollar will go further is a great solution. But it's not going to be possible if you're a delivery guy in Serbia or Russia and your passport kind of sucks. And this is why I've kind of held off on making a broad solutions guide video, because everyone has such unique different circumstances, and as much as I would like to, I can't save all of you. Or can I? The more I thought about it, the more I realized maybe, just maybe, I actually can. Maybe with enough time, dedication, and effort, I could put together an all-encompassing video guide so that just about everyone who watches it has a good idea on how to escape this nightmare known as work, regardless of your individual circumstances. I don't know if I'll literally save all of you, but I'm certainly going to try my best. This is the ultimate Gen Z guide to surviving unemployment. Whether you're a poor 30-year-old homeless guy living on the streets in India, or a young 21-year-old guy in America living with your parents and lacking a purpose, I'm confident that by the end, you'll find something of value in this guide and have a better idea of how to quit your bullshit, miserable job forever. Let's get this show on the road. Here's a pyramid I drew detailing the 4 levels of wage slavery. Now, just about all of you who find yourself trapped in the system and wanting to escape will fall into one of these 4 levels. We're going to go through each of them one by one and talk about how to escape each level. Let's begin our journey at level 1. Level 1, living with parents. So, I've always said that Gen Z should feel absolutely no shame in living with your parents for as long as you want or need. Living with your parents till 30 or until you get married is the norm in just about every other country in the world besides America. And it was the norm for the overwhelming majority of human history as well. Now, I know that living with parents is not an option for everyone. A lot of us Gen Z and millennials have really unbearable Gen X/boomer parents that either won't let us or will make our lives an absolute living hell for living with them. If that's you, don't worry, I got you covered in the next part. If you are living with your parents though, and you're watching this video, presumably you want to get out of that situation for whatever reason. Maybe they won't stop nagging you about getting a job or going back to school, typical delusional boomer parent nonsense. So here is the best way to escape the situation. First of all, whatever you do, do not, I repeat, do not get a 9-to-5. Of course, if you're following this channel, you were probably never going to do that anyways, but here's why this is just the worst idea imaginable. The economy is so crap right now that getting a job and working hard not only won't allow you to save any money, it will actually set you back even further than when you weren't working at all. This is because having a job itself isn't free. You're going to have to buy a car to get to work, which is pretty expensive. You're going to have to pay for all the commuting costs, such as gas and insurance. And to top it all off, your idiot boomer parents will expect you to move out and rent your own $2,000 per month apartment because in their delusional minds, it's still 1960 and rent is still $50 per month. Now, all of you probably already know this. So the question now is, what do you do instead? A subscriber of mine, AJ King 22, has embarked on his own journey of escaping the 9-to-5, and he's come up with a pretty promising strategy. If you're living with your parents, chances are you're living in a residential area with plenty of neighbors. What AJ King did was simply go around communicating with his neighbors and offering to mow their lawns. By working around his neighborhood, he was able to cut out all the BS wasteful expenses that are required for a job, such as needing a car to get to work and needing to live smack dab in the city center where rent is the most expensive just to be close enough to your job. And since he's living with his parents, he has no living expenses, meaning everything he earns from his gigs can directly go into saving for his ultimate plan of escape. Recently, he's come up with an even better idea of walking people's dogs, as now his business expenses are totally zero. He doesn't even need to spend any money maintaining lawnmower equipment like he used to. He used ChatGPT to type up this business proposal prompt, and he plans to just deliver this around his local neighborhood. You can feel free to use this as well, either screenshot it or I've also linked it in the description. He was inspired when he saw this story of a guy who literally made $300,000 in a year just by picking up and cleaning dog poop. Wow, you know how dog shit wages became something of a meme on this channel? It's not even a joke anymore, guys. These modern day employers pay such terrible low wages that even literal dog shit is worth more than their pay at this point. At this point, I'm wondering if I'm being actually way too generous to them by even calling their wages dog shit. Hey guys, so I'm on a mission and I need your help. You see, I've made it the purpose of this channel to defend Gen Z from all these nasty, delusional Gen Z haters, and I've just realized we're starting to get close to taking down the most despicable one yet, the angry guy. This guy is not just another delusional old fart calling Gen Z lazy. He's literally had videos where he openly celebrates Gen Z suffering and even dying. He's just straight up a terrible, terrible human being. Now, thankfully, his channel is rapidly dying and we are rapidly gaining ground on him as we speak. So, if you're new here and enjoying this content, definitely consider subscribing and helping us take down the biggest Gen Z hater out there. The current goal is to surpass him in subscribers by the end of summer. With your help, we can absolutely do this. Level 3, paycheck to paycheck. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I know that a lot of you simply don't have the option of living with your parents. And as promised, this part of the video is for you. So, if you're not living with your parents, you're probably living a paycheck to paycheck job, which in this economy is extremely frustrating. No matter how much and how hard you work, you're unable to save up anything at all. This is because with these insane modern day inflation rates, anytime you make even a few extra bucks via getting a raise, working overtime, whatever, rent, food, and other basic living expenses rise even way faster than the puny extra few bucks you make per hour. And by the end of it, you're right back to where you started. So, since you've probably already noticed you're never going to save up any money by working harder or working more, what are you supposed to do? Saving money is very simple in theory. It's a simple math equation of subtracting how much you spend from how much you make. Now, the reason most people never make it out of the rat race is because society has conditioned you to hustle more, study more, work more, make more. But then they raise the cost of living and you're right back to where you started. So, instead of trying to save up by earning more, let's focus on the other half of the equation, which is spending less. Much less. A trend known as revenge saving has recently emerged amongst Gen Z in China, led by 26-year-old streamer known as Xiao who carefully tracks her budget to make sure she spends no more than $1.30 per day and is able to cook some pretty healthy meals. Now, a lot of you were wondering if this is possible in the West, and the answer is actually yes. But you'll have to do it a bit differently. There are similar Western versions of Xiao such as Frugal Fit Mom, who teaches you to do decent recipes that you can feed yourself with for as little as $1 per day. In fact, she recently made a video where she was able to cook a full dinner for her family of 6 on just $5 per meal. Now, the $1 per day guide is a bit outdated, as she recently herself said that $1 per day is not really realistic in the post-2020 hyperinflation era anymore. And I think we can all agree with her on this. But using her guides, you could probably still get it down to between $3 to $5 per day, which would definitely be a huge game changer for a lot of you. Now, there's a further cheat code you can use to get it down even more. If you ask around and do a little research, you'll find that chances are there's a local food bank in your area. This is where leftover food from grocery stores that would have been thrown out anyways is given away to people for free. I used to literally live off these in my own journey of escaping the 9-to-5 in my mid-20s. Now, if you combine this strategy with revenge saving, you can easily get your food bill down to $100 per month or even less, while still eating decently delicious and healthy meals. According to official statistics, the average American has to spend $800 per month on food these days. If you're watching this video, though, I'm assuming you spend a bit less than that, maybe the $500 to $700 range. So revenge saving alone is going to help you save at least $500 per month, which is huge in this economy. Perhaps the most important lesson I've learned throughout all my videos is that the main reason modern work culture is so broken is because it goes against the very laws of nature itself. Humans have evolved to work hard and improve themselves, but they evolved to do this in short, intense bursts, balanced by long, extended breaks. Cavemen only spent about 2 to 3 hours per day hunting and foraging. Medieval peasants got the entire 3 months of winter off as it was too cold to do farm work. Sure, they worked extremely hard when they had to work, but it was also offset by insanely long multi-month holidays that modern workers can only dream of. This is just a natural biological rhythm humans seem to be designed for. So plan on having a pretty intense upcoming 6 months to a year where you'll have to do as much work as you can while still maintaining enough discipline to save as much as you can. It will be a challenge. It won't be easy, but waiting for you on the other side is a well-deserved and much-needed long extended break, and perhaps even a permanent escape if you play your cards right. Level 3, planning the escape. Okay, so once you've saved up enough from either revenge saving, gig work, or a combination of the two, now we get to the good stuff. Now, you can actually start formulating a plan to escape this miserable 9-to-5 rat race forever. Within a year or two, if you've played your cards right, you should have somewhere between 10 to 30K saved up, depending on how much savings you started off with. Once you've saved up this much, a number of permanent solutions open up for you, which will allow you to quit the soulless 9-to-5 rat race forever. You can move abroad and live in a cheap hostel. You can convert a van into a livable space and zoom around the country stealth camping and gaming. You can buy a cheap property overseas and start a little mini garden in your backyard. It all depends on your personal preference and lifestyle. Now, we've made an entire tier list video guide discussing all these options if you're really interested in this. But for now, I'll give you a quick overview of the 3 best options in my opinion. Moving abroad / volunteering. So if you have between 10 to 20K saved up, this is a very, very good option. What you can do is go to workaway.info, sign up, and look for some cheap volunteering gigs abroad where you can volunteer in a cheap hostel or a family farm, for example. You work about 20 hours per week of pretty chill, easy tasks, and in return, you get free accommodation and sometimes even free food. I did this for years and essentially was able to live for free. If you have between 10 to 20K saved up, you can literally live like this for 5 to 10 years or even more. During this time, I looked to secure some sort of online income so that you could sustain this lifestyle indefinitely. I know the online job market is really oversaturated now, I understand that, but if you have 5 to 10 years to build experiences and keep trying, chances are eventually at some point you'll find something. Van life. If traveling around living like a nomad forever isn't your thing, you could look to go for van life instead. I'm using van life because this is the most popular amongst Gen Z influencers, but you could do the same thing with an RV or camper as well. Van life will typically cost you around $30,000 to start when you consider the conversion cost along with the cost of the van itself. And while your living expenses will be significantly cheaper than working a 9 to 5 in the city, it won't be zero either. Between gym memberships for showers and still needing to buy food, van life is estimated to cost at least $800 per month. So you'll still need some type of online income to supplement this, whether it's an online business or becoming the next big van life influencer yourself. Obviously, all these costs are quite significant. So for these reasons, I'd recommend you try the other two options first and only do van life if you really, really want to. Overseas property. The housing market is indeed totally cooked right now. And as a result, most us Gen Z and millennials have quietly accepted we'll never own a house. But this mostly is only in the West. There are still places in Europe and Asia where you can get decent properties for very affordable price ranges. Japan, for example, has a lot of decent properties available on their Akita banks for as little as $20,000. And a young guy by the name of Eustace Reed recently bought a house for just $5K in the Balkans and has gone absolutely viral over it. Once you own a property, even if it's a cheap one, you can use another cheat code we discussed in another video, which is having your own mini garden on your balcony or backyard. Most of you probably don't want to start a full-on homestead, but by growing some simple vegetables and potatoes, you can have a very, very low maintenance food source and can cut down on your living expenses and dependence on society even further. Level 4, getting out and staying out. Okay, so now we're at the final level of escaping the BS 9 to 5 system forever. For those of you who've made it this far, congratulations. Give yourselves a huge pat on the back. You're already ahead of 99% of people in this world who are stuck in a perpetual cycle of being a slave to the system. You've also more or less covered your basic minimum living expenses without having to work anymore. Now, for some of you, this is already a big enough win. You just wanted your freedom back. You never needed big mansions or fancy luxurious items, and if that's the case, more power to you. You've already beaten the game. But for others, you might eventually get to a point where you end up wanting more. You might find yourself wanting to start a family, wanting to travel more, or just wanting to get rich in general, so this section is for you. Since you've already followed steps 1 through 3 to get to this point, you are already at a massive advantage because you know how to live comfortably and thrive on a budget. This means that any money you earn, save, or invest can directly go into a long-term savings fund, which is absolutely huge. I would say once you get to this point where your basic living expenses are covered, you can start looking to get into the investment game as you can afford to take some risks without having to worry about going homeless if the investment fails. Still, you want to be somewhat smart, strategic, and safe, especially if you're totally new to this. I'd recommend averaging into relatively safe and consistent assets such as Bitcoin and the S&P 500 for starters. Then, depending on how much time you want to spend researching the financial markets, you can build a bigger and more diverse portfolio. Now, if you want to really learn more about investment and trading strategies, there's a ton of better and more qualified people to talk about this than me. You can find countless YouTube guides out there. They're all over the place. You don't need my help for this. But I will say, there is a general underlying premise you want to follow no matter what specific investments you buy. Be smart, be patient, and let it grow over time. You'll often see these crazy outlier stories of some guy finding the right meme coin at the right time and 10xing his investment overnight. That does happen and it's not impossible. But this only happens if you really know what you're doing, and even then it's very, very rare. It's okay to occasionally gamble a small amount of money on these lotto ticket moonshots, but you don't want to get too caught up in it. Have a multi-year plan and outlook when it comes to your investments. Don't count on being an overnight millionaire. The good news is, since you've already escaped the rat race and have a stable foundation covering all your basic necessities now, you've now bought yourself enough time and space to be able to wait a few years to watch an investment portfolio grow. Conclusion. Okay, so hopefully after watching this video, whatever situation you find yourself in, you have some idea of how to get out of it now. I know that none of these solutions are perfect, but hopefully you have at least some idea of where to start.